Something insane is happening right now, and almost nobody is brave enough to say it out loud. Women who spent their entire lives swimming in attention like fish in water, are suddenly meeting men who simply don't care. Men who don't react. Men who don't chase. Men who don't melt the moment a woman smiles at them. And the panic, my God, the panic is real. Scroll through social media. You'll see thousands of posts from women complaining about emotionally unavailable men. But let's be honest, what they're really describing is a new type of man. A man who has completely stepped out of the validation economy. A man who refuses to play the game. Here's the test: watch what happens when an attractive woman meets a man who doesn't treat her like she's special. Not rude. Not cold. Just genuinely indifferent, as if her beauty means nothing. First comes curiosity. Then confusion. Then full-blown frustration. Because for the first time in her life, her usual tools don't work. The smile? Nothing. The hair flip? Nothing. The flirt? Nothing. Even the "I dropped something so you look at me" trick? Nothing. And this terrifies her, not because something's wrong with him, but because something is suddenly wrong with her worldview. Most women today grew up in an environment where attention was automatic. Pretty? You get praise. Sad? You get comfort. Existing? You get validation. But then she meets a man who doesn't reward her presence. A man with standards. A man with control. A man who is too busy building his life to worship someone for merely showing up. That kind of man breaks her programming. I saw this happen recently at a networking event. A gorgeous woman, the kind who normally has a line of men orbiting her, walked up to a high-value guy who runs a tech company. She tried everything. Touching his arm, complimenting his clothes, dropping hints she was single. He answered politely, then went right back to his laptop. She actually hovered around him afterward, asking people if he was socially awkward. The idea that he simply wasn't interested didn't even enter her mind. Because for women like her, male attention isn't a luxury, it's oxygen. And when oxygen disappears, panic starts. This is the shift nobody wants to talk about. Male attention is no longer guaranteed. And when something that used to be guaranteed becomes scarce, the group that depended on it most becomes desperate. Women spent years saying, "I don't need a man. I'm the prize. I'm independent." Now they're screaming online about men not chasing them, not trying hard enough, not entertaining their tests, not reacting to jealousy games. But here's the truth nobody wants to admit. Men didn't get cold. Men didn't get broken. Men didn't get emotionally unavailable. Men got selective. For decades, women treated male attention as something cheap, something infinite, something they could take for granted. Until one day, men collectively said, "No more." And that's when the panic began. Suddenly being mysterious stops working. Suddenly withholding affection stops working. Suddenly the drama, the flirting with other guys, the games that used to drive men crazy, fall flat. Because these new men? They don't play. They don't negotiate. They don't dance around someone's ego. They just walk away. And that's the one move women never prepared for, a man who simply doesn't care if he's chosen or not. A man who is willing to lose her. A man who sees his life as the prize, not her attention. This is the man causing global panic. Here's where the story gets even darker, because the panic isn't coming from men changing. It's coming from women realizing they have no replacement strategy when male validation disappears. For the first time in modern history, women are facing a type of man they were never trained to handle. A man who cannot be controlled by attention, sex, emotions, or manipulation. Let me show you what I mean. When a woman encounters a man who doesn't chase her, she doesn't just feel confused, she feels exposed. Because suddenly, she has to rely on something she never had to build. Actual value. Think about it. Most women never had to develop social skill, emotional intelligence, or personality depth. Why? Because attention was automatic. Approval was automatic. Interest was automatic. A face and a figure were enough to get what they wanted. But when that old currency stops working, they realize they're bankrupt. I watched this play out recently with a woman from my city, known for being the hot one in every room. She approached a calm, put-together guy at a rooftop bar. He nodded politely, gave short answers, and focused on his drink. So she escalated. Laughing louder. Touching him. Complimenting his style. Even dropping the classic "I'm bad at relationships" line to bait emotional investment. Nothing. She spiraled. She started asking around. Is he gay? Is he taken? Is something wrong with him? No. What's wrong is she encountered a man who doesn't reward chaos with attention. A man with standards. A man who doesn't react like Pavlov's dog every time a woman smirks. And that is something her entire worldview wasn't built for. Because here's the quiet truth. Women were conditioned to expect attention, not earn it. Men were conditioned to earn attention, not expect it. Now the roles are flipping, and the meltdown is seismic. Women are suddenly discovering that attention from men isn't a guarantee. Likes, DMs, matches, all dropping. Men scrolling past selfies. Men leaving women unseen. Men not reacting to thirst traps. Men engaging less and less. And the withdrawal symptoms hit them like a drug addict losing their supply. One woman I know went from posting cute outfit pics to deep cleavage shots to basically lingerie content. Why? Because her ex stopped viewing her stories. Not blocked. Not muted. Just indifferent. She eventually messaged him at 1 a.m. asking, "Did you see my photos?" He replied, "I don't check your profile anymore." Her entire identity cracked in half. Because women who rely on validation to feel valuable crumble when men disconnect from the validation game. And make no mistake, they are panicking because the power dynamic is shifting. Women who treated attention like a resource they could endlessly withdraw from are now discovering the bank is empty. Meanwhile, men who are always expected to chase are learning how peaceful their life becomes when they stop. That calm, that indifference, that emotional self-control. It terrifies women who depended on male attention as social currency. And here's the wildest part. The more indifferent men become, the more aggressively women chase them. The louder they flirt. The more they test. The more they escalate. But the new generation of men? They don't bite. They're not angry. They're not bitter. They're not trying to get revenge. They're just tired. And when a man gets tired, he becomes untouchable. Men aren't refusing to take women seriously because they hate them. They're refusing because they finally understand. Attention isn't owed. Chasing isn't required. Investment isn't unconditional. And women who took these things for granted are now standing in a world where the old rules no longer work. The real crisis begins when women realize that their usual tactics not only fail, they expose something they never wanted to confront. That many of them never learned how to build a connection without manipulation. See, for decades, certain behaviors worked flawlessly. A little jealousy. A little drama. Withholding affection. Flirting with other guys. Emotional breakdowns on command. The classic "if he wanted to, he would." These moves were effective because men were desperate for approval, terrified of rejection, conditioned to prove their worth at all costs. But now? Men aren't reacting. Men aren't chasing. Men aren't apologizing for things they didn't do. Men aren't jumping through hoops to earn the bare minimum. And the moment manipulation stops working, a woman has nothing left to hide behind. I talked recently to a therapist who sees this meltdown constantly. One of her clients was panicking because her boyfriend didn't get jealous when she flirted with other men. She escalated, dancing with guys in front of him, getting numbers, posting photos to provoke a reaction. His response? Do what makes you happy. She broke down crying in her session. Why? Because she didn't know how to function in a relationship where drama didn't control the man. Her entire blueprint depended on emotional chaos. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. When manipulation fails, the real person underneath gets exposed. And many don't like what they see. Because developing a personality requires effort. Being pleasant requires character. Being supportive requires maturity. Being valuable requires self-awareness. But wearing makeup and posting selfies, that's easy. That requires nothing. So when the easy tools stop working, the panic hits brutally hard. Women who spent years coasting on beauty alone are now realizing that beauty is common. Attention isn't guaranteed. Men have options. Looks aren't enough. And men care about peace more than face shape. One guy told me this story. He stopped planning dates because his girlfriend put in zero effort. Not out of spite, just out of fairness. He simply matched her energy. She called him emotionally distant. Not because he was distant, but because he stopped overcompensating for her lack of contribution. This is the panic women never prepared for. When a man stops trying, they have no idea how to start. Because here's the raw truth. Many women only know how to attract men. Very few know how to keep them. They know how to grab attention. They don't know how to hold respect. They know how to be wanted. They don't know how to be valued. They know how to excite. They don't know how to bring peace. And that is the exact type of woman modern men are losing interest in. This is why everywhere you look, you see the same narrative. Men don't try anymore. Men don't care. Men are emotionally detached. Men are impossible to date. But the truth is painfully simple. Men haven't changed. They've evolved. They stopped pouring into bottomless cups. They stopped rewarding disrespect. They stopped playing rigged games. They stopped investing in people who bring chaos instead of comfort. And the women who built their entire identity on being desired are now standing in front of men who desire peace more than anything else. That's why they're panicking. Not because men are broken, but because men finally stopped letting themselves be used. But the real earthquake hits when women realize something even more terrifying. Men aren't just walking away from them. Men are walking away from the entire game. For the first time in modern history, male attention is no longer guaranteed. And without male attention, the entire social ecosystem collapses. Think about it. Male attention built social media. Male attention drives dating apps. Male attention inflates female egos. Male attention powers OnlyFans, Instagram, nightlife, validation culture, the entire illusion of infinite choice. Without men watching, liking, chasing, commenting, pursuing, everything falls apart. And that's exactly what's happening. Women scroll through their Instagram stories and see fewer views from men. They post a selfie and get half the likes they used to. They upload a thirst trap hoping he sees it, but he clicked unfollow months ago. They go on dating apps expecting hundreds of matches. And suddenly the men who used to worship them, they're swiping right on younger, more pleasant, more feminine women. It's not that men are playing hard to get. They're not playing at all. This is why panic has turned into full-scale identity crisis. Because many women were told their value, their entire value, was in their desirability. That being pretty was enough. That being independent meant never having to try. That men should compete for them, fight for them, beg for them, serve them. But when men stop competing, they have no idea who they are anymore. A woman I once knew, gorgeous, popular, endless options, spent her 20s rejecting stable men because they were too boring. At 31, she was still attractive, still confident. But something changed. The attention slowed. The DMs became drier. The dates became shorter. The men she wanted were uninterested. And the men who pursued her, she didn't want them. She told me one sentence I will never forget. It's like the world stopped clapping for me. That's it. That's the psychological collapse happening right now. When validation disappears, their sense of identity disappears, too. And here's where the panic intensifies. Women are realizing that men are becoming what they always feared. Unavailable, indifferent, emotionally untouchable. Not because men are damaged. Because they're finally satisfied without female approval. Men are traveling. Building businesses. Going to the gym. Stacking money. Joining brotherhoods. Playing sports. Leveling up. Finding purpose. Not because they gave up on women, but because women were no longer worth the cost. And the panic becomes audible when they say, men are scared of strong women. Translation: men won't tolerate my attitude anymore. Men can't handle independent women. Translation: my personality is a burden, not a benefit. Men are intimidated by my standards. Translation: my standards don't match my value. This is what happens when entitlement collides with reality. The men they ignored are thriving. The men they rejected are winning. The men they used for attention now give it to someone else. The men who used to chase don't even look up anymore. It's not heartbreak. It's displacement. They're not grieving a man. They're grieving the loss of power. And you can see it everywhere. In the rage-filled TikToks. In the panic posts about real men. In the sudden desire for traditional roles. In the desperate attempts to shame men into caring again. In the loud declarations of "I don't need a man" while crying into a pillow at night. Because deep down, they know. The game is changing. The power is shifting. The attention economy is collapsing. And men are finally prioritizing themselves. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud, but everyone feels. Women aren't panicking because men disappeared. They're panicking because men finally have options that don't involve them. For decades, women believed men were a renewable resource. No matter how badly they behaved, no matter how disrespectful they were, no matter how unrealistic their demands became, there would always be another man waiting, hungry, desperate for a chance. But now, men have standards. Men have boundaries. Men have leverage. Men have self-control. Men have purpose. And that terrifies them. Because the moment a man realizes he doesn't need a woman to feel complete, is the moment he becomes uncontrollable. You can't manipulate a man who is centered. You can't guilt a man who is indifferent. You can't shame a man who knows his value. You can't scare a man who is comfortable alone. You can't lure a man who sees through the performance. This is why the panic feels like an earthquake. Because it's not just romantic panic. It's existential panic. Here's the truth. A woman whose entire identity is built on being desired is destroyed the moment she meets a man who doesn't desire her. And that's the man she obsesses over. Not the one who chases. Not the one who compliments. Not the one who tries. It's the one who looks right through her beauty like it's background noise. The one who doesn't flinch when she tests him. The one who doesn't collapse when she threatens to leave. The one who refuses to pedestalize her like the rest. Because that man forces her to confront a horrifying question. If I can't control him, who am I? And the answer is often silence. A silence so loud it becomes panic. That's why so many women suddenly want traditional roles again. But only after their prime years passed. Only after all the good men moved on. Only after they wasted their youth on chaos and fun. Only after they spent a decade rejecting commitment. Now they want stability. Now they want maturity. Now they want loyalty. Now they want the men they once mocked. But these men saw everything. The games. The manipulation. The lies. The entitlement. The disrespect. The "I don't need a man" mantra. And now the same women say, where are all the good men? They're not hiding. They're thriving. They're in gyms. In offices. In garages building businesses. On flights to new countries. With healthier women. Or simply at peace, alone, but not lonely. Women are panicking because the attention they assumed was eternal turned out to be temporary. And the men they thought would be there forever finally walked away. This is the first generation of women witnessing the consequences of believing a lie. That men would always try harder, give more, chase faster, tolerate worse. That lie is dead. And now the panic is just the sound of that lie collapsing. Because the men who don't take women seriously anymore, they aren't broken. They aren't bitter. They aren't afraid. They're free.